guys are the brave ones getting out on negative temperature. I think this is the coldest place I have ever been in my life was this morning. So some of you may have been in colder, but I think this was it. So I made Dale shovel the driveway while I got the car running. I'm just kidding. I did not do that. Man, I'm so glad you guys are here. We are picking up in our series, The Life of Jesus. It's really, it's pivotal to who we are as a church. It's foundational to us because our mission statement is that we want to reach people who reach people to be fully devoted followers of Jesus. And so to be devoted in following something, you have to know about that thing. And so over the course, certainly of this year, of the life of our church, we will often come back to this idea, the life of Jesus, so we can remind ourselves of how Jesus interacted, what He thought, what He said, what He talked about. And so we will be doing this for 2 weeks this week, and then in 2 more weeks, and then we'll move into a series that looks at Easter for a few weeks. But I'm excited about this today because I think it's something that all of us, I know I relate to it. I think a lot of you will relate to it as well. So to start out, I have to admit something in my life. I'm going to fess this up. There are many times when I choose what's convenient over what's best. Right? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. I'll just take it for everybody. I'm the only one here, I'm sure, that does that, but I'm just going to vent to you about this morning. Sometimes I choose what's convenient over what's best. Let me give you an example. This plays out a lot on Saturday afternoon because I try to take the afternoon off, just kind of relax, hang out at the house, and inevitably we need something at the store. Maybe you can relate. You're watching the game, you're just hanging out, the wife, the kids, something at the store you need. Now, I could go down the road to a place like this that has lots of fresh vegetables and fruit and real food and employees who speak to you and are generally pretty nice to you as you go down there. I could drive into town. I say into town like I live way out on a farm somewhere. It's like 8 minutes from my house, but that's into town when you're laying on the couch, right? That's 16 minutes round trip, not including the shopping time. So I could go here. This is what's best on that day when I need to go get the kids something to eat for dinner, because after all, they're my kids and I'm responsible for feeding them. I can't say, hey, sorry guys, we'll wait till tomorrow, right? I have to feed them. So that's where I could go. Unfortunately, most of the time, I choose what's convenient, and it looks something like this, right? Because this is only 2 minutes from my house, and they've kind of got groceries. There's nothing really fresh here, but they have some stuff that you can put in your mouth and eat and say it's food. Other people may not believe it's food, and I'm not knocking 7-Eleven. Listen, this was not built to be a grocery store. In fact, you know what people call this? A what kind of store? A convenience store, right? Because it is convenient. And listen, the people who work there may not talk to you when you come in, right? They're doing their own thing. That's fine. But this is only 2 minutes away, and so sometimes I choose this, I have to admit. But in the case that I feel guilty because my kids shouldn't grow up on Twizzlers every weekend, so I think, no, I need to go get them some food, and I do drive all the way into town, 6 extra minutes to the grocery store to get them some food. They like macaroni and cheese, so I go to get them some macaroni and cheese. Now, I'm not talking about like get them some nice cheese, come home and shred it, make some pasta and put it in. That's what I should do, right? That's what's best for them as little kids. But I generally end up grabbing them something that looks like this. That's an orange powder from somewhere. I'm not sure. The only thing I know about that is it's not cheese, okay? But when you mix that with these rubbery things here, whatever they are, and you pour some water in, it kind of resembles macaroni and cheese, at least enough that they don't complain about it yet. So even though I go to the place I should go, I still look for the most convenient thing. And if I'm real honest with you, I don't know if you've seen me in the grocery store, but I take a chance because I think most people are looking around at the shelves and they don't really look down. If it's Saturday, I'm probably in my house slippers. I'm just risking it. Like nobody's going to look at my shoes anyways, right? Because if I got my shoes on, now I got to go upstairs from the couch, get my shoes, come back downstairs, tie them. So I choose convenience. Maybe I'm the only one who does that. I'm not going to ask any of you to fess up, but I choose convenience over what is best a lot of times in my life. And this is obviously just a funny example, but I think there's something to this. We are drawn to convenience, aren't we? We like things that are the most convenient. We are drawn to things that are convenient in our life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when it comes to how we make decisions, when it comes to our relationship with Jesus, when it comes to being a follower of Jesus, Convenience just simply can't be the filter by which we measure what we are or are not going to be a part of, what we are going to do or what we're not going to do. Convenience can't be it. And so fortunately for us, Jesus, in His time here on earth, He kind of interacts with some guys who were a lot like me, maybe a lot like you, that convenience was at the front of their mind. And so today we're going to look in Luke chapter 9. If you have a Bible, we'll have it on the screen as well. Luke records this story for us after he does some research and investigation. He writes this story down about this interaction that Jesus has with some men in His life. And so He's traveling around and there's people following him. He had just got finished performing some miracles and doing some teaching. And so anytime Jesus performed miracles, more and more people came out. They liked the show. It wasn't because they were signed up to be a Jesus follower. It was just like, hey, that's kind of cool. Maybe He'll call me up and do a miracle with me. And so they kind of followed Him around. So there's this crowd following Jesus as He goes. And He interacts with some men that I think maybe you will relate with. And so we're going to be in Luke chapter 9, we're going to pick up in verse 57. Let me find it in my Bible here. Luke 9:57. It says this, as they were traveling on the road, someone said to Him, I will follow you wherever you go. Now that's a big statement. This is Jesus. Somebody is following, He says, I will follow you wherever you go. There's a lot in that word. Jesus is with His disciples. He's going to Jerusalem, and this man just comes up out of the blue in this crowd and says, hey, Jesus. And you got to put yourself there. Everybody turns around. Hey, man, somebody's calling out Jesus. I wonder what this guy's going to say. And He says, I will follow you wherever you go. And at first glance, right, that seems like a good thing. Like we would applaud this guy. Yeah, hey man, this guy he heard Jesus teaching. He saw Jesus performing miracles. He wants to be a part of this. And in fact, if you study this a little bit, this guy was a scribe. He was a very intelligent man. Like this would have been a good guy for Jesus to get on the team. The other disciples were probably like, man, this guy wants to sign up with us. Like no more fishermen, no more tax collectors. This guy's a sharp guy. Like this is a big win that he would say, Jesus, hey, I'll go with you wherever you go. This was somebody. It's not like getting the kid who got picked last for dodgeball all the time. I'm not asking you if that's you. You don't have to admit it. We probably know if it was you anyways, right? No, I'm just kidding. It's not like that. It's not like getting that kid. Like, well, okay, we'll take him on our team. He's all that's left. No. This was somebody. This was somebody that they had to be on their team. But Jesus is so smart. He's so good at this. He realizes that He's just been doing miracles and that crowds are following Him. And at this point, it's really not that bad of a thing to be hanging out with Jesus. Like they weren't ready to kill Jesus yet. He was kind of the cool thing in town. He was kind of the show that people were coming out to see. So it's really not that bad to identify with Jesus yet. And so Jesus doesn't just say, okay, look how He responds to him in verse 58. He says this, Jesus told him, and I can just imagine this. Imagine, he's looking out over a field, like they're all in this field, and He looks out over this field and this crowd, and He points out to the field, and He says, look, those foxes, they have holes to sleep in. They've got a place for them to be. The birds of the air, they have nests. He points to some birds, because He's God, so He probably just made some birds fly by right then. He's like, some birds, boom, and here they come. It's really great to preach when you're Jesus. The visuals just come alive. And so He says, the birds, boom, look, they have nests. And people see the birds and they're like, yeah, that's true. The foxes have holes. I've never seen a fox there, but Jesus talks about it. Now there's like 12 out there. The birds, they do have nests. But then Jesus says, but the Son of Man has no place to lay His head. But I don't have anywhere to lay my head. He says to the guy, listen, I heard what you just said. You will follow me anywhere, but you need to know that I don't have a bed to sleep in at night. And it's silence. You don't hear the guy say, yeah, I know, I'm in. I'm still in. You don't hear anything. He doesn't say, no, I trust you. I'm committed to you. See, he doesn't sign up for what he said he was going to do. He doesn't actually follow Jesus wherever he goes. We know this because a few chapters later, we read about Jesus being arrested, getting ready to go to the cross. And you know what they don't do? They don't go, hey, arrest Jesus and this guy, right? He didn't follow him wherever. In fact, he didn't follow him anywhere. He disappeared. He's gone. Why? Because the level of commitment when Jesus said, okay, sign up, man. Now just know I don't have somewhere to sleep tonight. That level of commitment was not convenient. See, this man saw the miracles and the crowds, and he wanted that. He wanted the blessing, but not the burden. He wanted the blessing of being committed to Jesus, but not the burden. And he, like us, like me certainly in my life, wanted convenience. Just the simple thought for him of not having a place to sleep that night was too much. He totally wiped out his commitment. This guy was thinking of his destination. He was saying, Jesus, I'll follow you wherever you're going. He felt like Jesus was about to be somebody, that he was about to take over, that he was about to be king. And so he was saying, wherever that is, I will follow you. But in his mind, Jesus was going to a place of power and importance. But here's what we need to remember is that following Jesus isn't about the destination at which you arrive. It's about the mission on which you live. We don't follow Jesus because of the destination that He is leading us to. Certainly that is part of it, but we follow Jesus. We are devoted to Jesus. We commit to Jesus here on this earth because of the journey on which we are living, the mission that He has called us to. And I can't help but think that some of us in this room, we relate to this man. We relate to this man. We get it. We've said at some point in our life, I will follow you anywhere. And Jesus said, that's awesome. Here's what that means for you. And not unlike this man who had good intentions, I'm sure, the changes that needed to happen in our lives, the conveniences we needed to give up were just too uncomfortable. So sometimes we choose what is most comfortable. Maybe that's you. Maybe you can relate to him. Maybe not. Maybe that's not for you. But there's another guy. Jesus is really undaunted by this man. I think he kind of knew, hey, this guy, watch this. I'm going to make some birds flutter and he's going to be gone, you know. And sure enough, this guy just slinks back in the crowd. But there's another man. Just picture this guy's leaving the crowd. Everybody's kind of quiet. You're like, oh man, what a loser. You know, he didn't follow him 5 more steps. You know, it's kind of a silence comes over, and this guy's going back home to his Tempur-Pedic. He's like, I just can't get rid of it. You know, it's too much. I love it too much. And Jesus is looking around the crowd. They're thinking, man, that guy would have been awesome to add him to the team. Like that was a good guy. But there's another man who's following Jesus, and unlike the first man who tells Jesus he will follow him, Jesus actually calls this man out. So while everybody's quiet, you know, kind of parting the crowd, letting this guy head back home, everybody's kind of quiet. It's a little bit awkward. There's a little bit of tension, you know. Everybody's quiet. Then Jesus is like, hey, buddy, what about you? Right? He breaks the silence. I don't think he broke the tension. I think he added to it. He breaks the silence. And in verse 59, he says to another man, then he said to another, follow me. So he calls a guy out who is in this crowd. And this is a big deal. Jesus just singles him out. He says, hey, I want you to follow me. And the truth is, these are the greatest words you and I could ever hear. We may not think that. It may not feel that way. But the greatest thing we could ever hear is for God to say to us, I want you to follow me. And now this guy had just witnessed this whole thing that happened with the first guy. He saw the foxes. He saw the birds. He saw him kind of lower his head and begin walking out. And he's thinking, I'm not going to be embarrassed like that guy. I'm not going to be that. In fact, he was probably talking to his friends saying, man, can you believe this guy? He won't even give up his bed, you know? I mean, it can't be that bad. He can sleep on the ground for a little bit. He's probably making fun of him a little bit as this guy leaves. And he's saying, I don't mind being uncomfortable like that. And so when Jesus calls on him, he is ready to follow Jesus wherever he leads, almost. Because this is what he says to Jesus. First, let me go bury my father. First, let me go bury my father. Now, this seems like a pretty reasonable request, right? It seems like a pretty normal thing to ask. And Jesus, he says, you got it. Let me just run home. I'm going to take care of my dad. I'm going to bury my dad. He's probably thinking, I'm not flaky like that other guy. I'll catch up with you. I'll be back with you. But Jesus says this in response to him, let the dead bury their own dead. But you can go and spread the news of the kingdom of God. And that seems kind of like a jerky thing to say. And I'm not calling Jesus a jerk, but I'm just saying, when I read this, I'm like, gosh, Jesus, he just wanted to go bury his dad, you know? And Jesus is like, hey, let the dead bury I don't even know how that's possible. How do the dead bury the dead? They're all dead, you know? That can't happen, Jesus, you know? But that's what Jesus says to this guy. And I can picture this entire crowd with their eyes wide open, all turned to Jesus to see what their reaction is. You've probably been in a situation like this where something happens and it's really awkward. I mean, it's just really awkward. And you wish you weren't there, but you're also glad that you are so you can see how it plays out, right? Like you're like, I just want to see how this ends. Hope nobody notices I'm here. I don't really want to leave. I mean, before you're mad at Jesus for saying this, you need to know what Jesus knew about this guy. And you need to know what Jesus knew about death. Jesus understood death. You can read more stories of Jesus' life. Jesus himself cried when he lost someone. When somebody died, when Lazarus died, Jesus wept over that. He understood death. He mourned. He was sad. And Jesus knew something. He knew that this guy's dad wasn't actually dead yet. Because see, their custom, in the Jewish custom, was to bury somebody the day they died. They didn't embalm them. They didn't treat them with anything. The day they died, they buried him. So if this guy was saying, let me go bury my dad, what he was really saying is, Jesus, my dad's pretty old. He doesn't have a lot longer to live. Let me go home. Let me spend some time with him. Let me make sure I've got my inheritance lined up from him. And then when he dies, I'm set up so that I can then come back and follow you. That's what he was saying to Jesus. He's saying, I'm willing to follow you anywhere, but first, let me make sure that I've set up some security for myself. Let me go back home to my dad, get some things in order where I can be taken care of. He's probably thinking, Jesus, if you let me go get this inheritance, I'll buy us both a bed, okay? No more of this sleeping on the ground stuff. We can do this together. Let me go home and get this taken care of. In other words, Jesus, I will follow you, but not right now. Jesus, I'll follow you. I will be committed to you, but not right now. Let's wait till it's a little more convenient. And this man valued security over sacrifice. He valued having that security. Let me go home and make sure everything is in order for my future. And then when that has happened, I will follow you. And we understand this guy, don't we? We get this. We've been, maybe we can remember like this: security, not sacrifice, makes life more convenient. Isn't that true? The more money we have in the bank, the better job we have, the better relationships we have, the things that we have ironed out. Security is what makes life convenient, not sacrifice. The sacrifice is always inconvenient. The sacrifice is always difficult. Sacrifice always causes us to give up something, to lose something. And for some of you this morning, maybe this is the guy that you can relate to the most. Maybe there's a time in your past that you felt God calling you. Maybe right now God is asking you to be a part of something. And your answer is like this guy's, yes. I'm not the first guy, right? My answer is not just a flat out no. My answer is yes, but not right now. Let me take care of some things. Let me work a little more. Let me get some more security. Let there be less uncertainty, and then I will be all in. And so sometimes we find comfort in that. I know I have before, because I'm not the first guy. It wasn't like a flat out, no, sorry, Jesus. It's just not a good time for me. Maybe that's you. Maybe your answer to Jesus, your response is, let me take care of some things first. Maybe that's where you're at. I don't know. Maybe not. So now the crowd is probably really quiet. I mean, like it got super awkward again because Jesus made this statement about the dead burying the dead. And that just made everybody kind of, twinge a little bit. Just, I don't know what to do with this, right? And so they're really quiet. And you remember in school, maybe when you were growing up, when the teacher's asking a hard question that nobody knows, what do? Do you look at them in the eyes, nod like no. You look at the ground, right? You look at the wall, you pass out, you whatever, like I will do whatever it takes for you not to call on me next. This is not going well for anybody else you've called on. I don't want you to acknowledge me. That's what these people are thinking. And they're sweating. They're thinking, oh gosh, now Jesus is calling people out, I hope he doesn't call on me. And that's what's going on here. But one brave guy, there's always that one in the classroom, who's like, oh, I got the answers. This is easy. I'm going to save all you other people. I got the answer. I'll take care of it. One brave guy speaks up and he says this: I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go. Does it sound familiar? And say goodbye to those at my house. This guy says, listen, I don't care if I have a bed, and I'm not asking you to wait for my dad to die, for me to handle all of that, for a few years to get my inheritance. I'll follow you. Just let me go home and let everybody else know. Let me tell them goodbye. Maybe make a few Instagram, a few Facebook posts about my adventure coming up here. Just let me go handle that, and then I will follow you. And that seems pretty logical. Like maybe this guy had a wife and kids, and dinner time they're going to be going, man, where's Bart at? He's not here, and he's out. I'm following Jesus. Well, that seems a little awkward there. So he's saying, just let me go talk to them. And I I bet Peter and John are probably thinking, finally, somebody we can use. He's just got to run home, tell his wife, his kids, whoever's at home, hey, I'm following Jesus. I'm going on a mission with him. And the tension is released. Everybody in the room takes a deep breath. Oh, they've got somebody. Jesus is not going to call on me. They feel good about the situation. But then Jesus says this to him in verse 62. No one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. To which all the disciples went, Jesus, come on. Like we're trying to, gather something here. We could use a few more people, There's just a few of us. This guy seemed pretty honest and wanting to help you guys out, help us out. Like, do you have to be this hard on him? They're probably thinking he just wanted to say goodbye to his family. And here's the thing about Jesus. He taught a lot about family. He taught how you should treat them, how you should love them. He isn't anti-family. But Jesus is warning this man about making an impulsive, emotional decision in the moment about being committed to Jesus. He was warning me, saying, listen, I know there was some awkwardness, and maybe you felt like, hey, I'll break the awkwardness and I'll just commit to this thing. It was just that emotional moment. But Jesus wanted to point out for this man that to disappear from his family, not to disappear from his family, but his point was that commitment required him to not look back. Like, hey, this isn't an emotional, yeah, Jesus, I'll do this. No. This means we're going full steam ahead. To not look back at other things. It required him to not let anything suck him back into what was convenient, to what was comfortable. And I think Jesus knew that for this man, the thing that would keep him from being committed was relationships. He was going to look back at those people that he was now going to leave to follow Jesus. And this man, maybe like some of you this morning, maybe some of you can relate to this guy more than the other two. For you to take this call to follow Jesus isn't about being willing to give up your comfort. You're okay doing that. It isn't about being willing to give up some money, some security in your life. You're okay with that. But for some of you this morning, maybe it is about that thing that you will look back on. Maybe it's a relationship like it was for this guy. Maybe it's something else that you will kind of look back on, and you'll take one step forward with Jesus, but then you kind of look back at what you're leaving. You kind of look back at that thing that was convenient, that thing that was comfortable, that thing that was providing security. You continue to look back. And I think the reason Jesus had issue with this guy is because he's going home to say, hey, see you later. Let me do this real quick. And I think Jesus was saying, no. Don't go home and say, see you later. This is a lifelong commitment. This is going home and saying goodbye. This is going home and leaving to follow me. This is commitment, because this is something we should remember. The call to follow Jesus is not a call for the moment. It's a call for every moment. This wasn't a commitment for the rest of the day or the rest of the week or just the rest of this little journey Jesus was on. Jesus was saying, no. I'm calling people to be committed to me for every moment of their life without looking back. And so I don't know if that's you today, if this is the one who you relate to the most. This convenience or this security, or maybe like this guy looking back at something. And being willing, hey, I will now, but I still have a hold on something back here. I'll follow you until it requires me to let go of this thing that I still am holding on to. Jesus wasn't trying to be difficult to these men. He wasn't trying to be a jerk to them. He wasn't trying to be rude or mean. He wasn't even ignoring the concerns that they had, but He wanted something from them that He wants something from us. And if you only remember one thing today, this is what I would want you to remember, is to be committed even when it's not convenient. Even when it's not convenient, because the truth is, it is so easy to be committed to being a devoted follower of Jesus when it's convenient. When it's the cool thing to do, when it doesn't cost us anything, when it doesn't require or ask anything of us that is uncomfortable, when it doesn't ask us to let something go or to take something on. It is easy to be committed when it's convenient, but Jesus is saying to the crowd, and He's saying to these men, no, I want you to be committed to me even when it's not convenient. See, Jesus knew that each of these men had something they wanted more than Him. They all had something in their life, and they were good things. They weren't bad things. You know, they weren't bad things that they were asking to go back to. But Jesus knew that being committed to Him meant that you had to love Him more than everything else in your life. And so He said, you want comfort, you want security, you want to hold on to what you have. And I think for these men, like all of us, we pursue things because they make our life more convenient. We make decisions just like the macaroni and cheese and the 7-Eleven, not because it's what's best, but because it's what's easiest right then. And life's tough. Life's busy. Life's demanding. There's bills to pay. There's sports to get to. Life can be overwhelming. And so in the moment, we choose what's convenient instead of choosing to be committed. And so maybe you're living where these men are. Maybe your comfort in life is too much for you to give up. Maybe it's security that you just have wrestled with. Maybe you're holding on to something. I don't know. But ultimately with you and with me, more often than not, it isn't that we're just dead set against God. We're not shaking our fists at God. Hey, I'm not following you. You know, like nobody in this crowd was like, no way, God, nobody wants to follow you. That's not typically where we find ourselves. Most of the time, it isn't that you're wrapped up in some big dark secret that you don't want anybody to know and you don't want anything to do with God. No. Most of the time, we just aren't committed because in some area of our life, it's not convenient. And if we're honest, most of the time we're not committed because we want the blessing of being committed, but not the burden. We hear stories about Jesus and the men who followed Him and the blessing of being committed to Jesus, and we want that, but we don't want the burden. We don't want the pain. We don't want the heartache. We don't want the loss. We don't want to make those difficult decisions. So as I look back at this story, I would say, do you know what those three guys' names were? No, you don't. Because that was the end of their story. We don't know their names. Because in that moment, they decided what was convenient. And they went back home. And they probably lived good lives, and they were probably nice men. They probably loved their wives and raised their kids and earned a living. But when we read throughout the rest of the pages of Luke, the men and women we read about are the men who, when Jesus said, hey, you follow me, they were committed. And it cost all of them something. But we talk about them today, don't we? We know those names today. We remember them today because they were committed to Jesus. So which of these three men do you relate to the most? What comfort do you have that you've just been unwilling to let go of? What security do you work so hard to make sure that is in your life that you're just unwilling to be committed? What is that thing you're holding on to so tightly that I'm following you, Jesus, but I'm also dragging this thing here because I can't let go of it? And let me ask it another way. What is it that has been too convenient for you to give up when it comes to being committed to Jesus? What if those of us who have trusted in Jesus, committed to being devoted followers of Jesus, no matter what? No matter what that meant for us. No matter what that meant we had to give up. No matter what that meant we had to take on. No matter what that meant changed in our lives. What do you think it would look like where you work? Where you play? What do you think Church 8025 would look like? If we would say, this relationship with Jesus is not about convenience. It is about commitment. Well, I can tell you, if you keep reading this story, the men and women who were committed to Jesus above all else changed the world. You are here today because of their commitment. You may know Jesus. You have heard about Jesus this morning because of their commitment. Not because of their convenient commitment, but because of their total commitment. And I believe that our homes, that our work, that our lives, that our kids' lives, generationally, that our church would impact this community at the very least the same way as these men and women did if we decided to be committed, not when it's easy, not when it's convenient, but all the time. So what do I want you to do? Right? I don't want you to leave with just knowledge about three guys and how they interacted with Jesus. I think when we read stories about Jesus, to be a devoted follower of Jesus, we have to put these into practice. And so I would say this to you. This is a pretty easy homework assignment for you. I want you to ask yourself maybe talk to your husband, your wife, maybe in your mission group in the next week coming up. Here's what I would tell you to ask yourself. Are you committed to following Jesus? And if not, what would it take for you to be? Are you committed to truly being a devoted follower of Jesus? Now, I don't know that about. I can only answer that about myself. I can only answer that about myself. But I would ask you to be honest, to evaluate yourself and say, am I truly committed to being a devoted follower of Jesus? And if the answer is no, then what would it take? What's keeping me? Which one of these men am I most like? And I think that's where it begins. Asking that question and being honest with ourselves will allow us to be committed even when it's not convenient. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? We're going to pray together. For those of you this morning who have trusted in Jesus and you would say Jesus is your Savior, there is no greater thing you can do in your life after you have trusted in Jesus than to commit your life to Him. Yes, your eternity is secure, but your salvation, your relationship with Jesus continues to grow. It continues to develop. We are constantly, should be, being made more like Christ, and that comes in our commitment to Him. And so I hope that you'll ask yourself that question, am I committed? And maybe in a room with this many people, somebody here today says, not only am I not committed, I can't truly follow Jesus because I've never allowed Him to be the Savior of my life. I've never trusted in Him to be my Savior. And if that's you today, I would love to talk to you after this service and just share with you what that looks like, what it means to invite Jesus to be your Savior. I would love to have that conversation with you. You can find me after this service. Let's pray together. God, we love You. Thank You that You sent Your Son Jesus, that He interacted with men and women on earth, and that thousands of years later we are still learning from those interactions. That the lessons that He taught to the people on that hillside that day are lessons that He is teaching us today. That when we say we will be committed, when we say we will follow You, it means to go all in. It means to give up anything, to love You more than everything. And God, I pray for all of us that we would have the courage and the boldness to do that, to make that commitment, to get over our desire for convenience and surrender that to You so that we could be committed men and women of God. I just believe in the bottom of my heart that when we do that, You use us. You make a difference in our lives and the lives of the people around us when we commit to You. So God, as a church today, we acknowledge, we confess that we want to be committed to You fully. Not just when it's convenient, not when it's easy, but fully committed to follow You. God, we love You and thank You. There is no other God to serve but You. In Your name I pray.